Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Night South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, I'm giddy right now. I'm giddy.
You got your buddies, man.
I am so excited. So we have Rome Odunze coming up on this episode of the pod. We recorded that before he was drafted by my Chicago Bears. I basically just tried to will it into existence with this interview, but it was great to be able to chop it up with him, the future Bear, which we did not know at the time of the interview. But it was a fantastic night to be a Chicago Bear fan, a less than fantastic night to be an Atlanta Falcons fan.
I got to give that team so much credit, man. For the second year in a row, I found myself laying on the floor laughing at the Atlanta Falcons. And I was not alone. I mean, last year was Jalen Carter, who from the jump, I was like, this guy is the best defensive player, if not player in this draft. And he was. I mean, he just, when you saw him on the Eagles, he was a difference maker from day one. I was like, you guys have that sitting right there. I know, you had some of the off the field stuff go on, but you got to trust your system. You can't just let that guy walk out of the state the way they did. That obviously that pick got traded from the Bears to the Eagles, who snatched him up. And then this year, I mean, it's not even just that the Falcons took Michael Penix Jr. It's the fact that the Falcons took 24-year-old Michael Penix Jr., who has had 4 season-ending leg injuries, after they signed Kirk Cousins, who is 35, coming off of a season-ending leg injury. Oh, and they didn't tell him.
Yeah. We talk a lot about alignment. By the way, we're going to talk about the entire the first round takeaways, recording this afterwards. Like I said earlier, we have the interview with Rome Odunze coming up, and then pitch me SEC uniforms as well. But yeah, it felt like everybody was happy except Falcons fans. And I know we have so many listening that just are so devastated to watch a franchise continue to operate this way. The franchise that passed on Lamar Jackson and said, we are not interested in you, said, we feel good enough about Desmond Ridder, and then had this plan wherein Kirk Cousins and his team didn't even know about it. If you saw the Pete Thamel tweet that came out during it, you're like, what in the world is going on? And look, context is everything, because if poor Michael Penix Jr., a guy that, look, I bang the drum for the career path that guy has taken, to be able to stick through it after all the season-ending injuries, all those different things. If they had just traded back and then taken him even, and they had just simply acquired another pick, if they had just done that, which they could have done in theory, because I didn't see anywhere where he was coming off the board that high at number 8. That was the surprising news. But if the Falcons had even taken some strategy into doing that, I think it's a much different reaction. And instead, he comes off the board at number 8 overall. 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks of the draft, with J.J. McCarthy going to the Vikings.
They got some value out of J.J. McCarthy when it was all said and done. I mean, I would take him over Michael Penix.
That makes one of us. I'm not as much of a McCarthy supporter, though. I just think he's more of a project. I think he and Bo Nix are more projects. How about Bo Nix overcoming Chad Morris?
Bo Nix overcoming all that stuff. Really,
it's unbelievable. Look, he overcame Brian Harsin.
Mm-hmm.
Gus as well. Over the course of the next few days, we will be hearing all these stories, these great stories. And I love the fact that the NFL draft is not doing what it did in 2020, where it's just doom and gloom about, like, oh my God, he watched his brother get shot in the face when he was 6. Yeah. And they have, like, actual inspiring stories that they talk about in the NFL draft, and that's all well and good. But Bo Nix has the most inspiring story of overcoming adversity because of dealing with Chad Morris and Brian Harsin. So good on Bo Nix for showing us that anything is possible. And I couldn't believe he came off the board that early. I couldn't believe that 6 quarterbacks came off the board before a single defensive player. Like, what? That was bananas to me. Like, that run was, it was very much historic. We had the funny moment from Saban where he comes on the broadcast. He's like, guys, see, this is why I retired. I'm a defensive guy. These are all offensive guys. Because he couldn't tamper
with that Toledo guy in the portal. That was his final straw.
Dude, Saban was excellent on the broadcast. Yeah. If you're not watching the ABC broadcast, you're doing it wrong. It's better than ESPN. It's better than NFL Network, with all due respect to the work that they do. Saban on the broadcast was gold, dropping little nuggets like that. They're tampering like he had essentially admitted, yes, the corner out of Toledo, who was a Quinyon Mitchell, who was the first corner drafted ahead of Terrion Arnold, and he said that was the number one player that Bama wanted to enter the portal, and they tried to get him to enter the portal, and he never did, and he stayed at Toledo. Reese Davis pretty much said, like, go, like, led Saban into that comment as well by saying he had some other opportunities that were available, but instead, that ultimately didn't happen. Yeah, Saban was fantastic on the broadcast. I know that's not the takeaway of like all these things during the NFL draft, but I kept thinking it the entire time. Desmond Howard, we're still doing this apparently. Luckily, Saban in his commentary with his insights, even Herbstreit had some moments in the broadcast where he would just kind of step back and let Saban take the stage. It was great context, the little moment that he shared with Jalen Milroe and all that stuff as well.
I love Jalen Milroe, man.
Dude, Jalen Milroe, when he stares into the camera, just get ready for it. A good moment is about to happen, always, each and every time, like what he does with his post-game interviews and all that stuff. But Will, there were, I think, a lot of different things you could look at with the way that this played out. If I were writing a think piece column, it would be defense is dead. Look at all the offensive players that were just drafted. Although that's really cyclical. And next year, watch, we're just going to have like 20 defensive players drafted in the first 25 picks. This felt like a draft that teams looked at that quarterback class for next year and they got worried and they just drafted their guy this year. Even the Patriots taking Drake May, which I like Drake May a lot. Yeah. But I thought they were going to maybe trade back and maybe kind of avoid that. And that didn't end up happening. Is that a bit too reactionary of a take, or is there some truth in looking at a quarterback class and saying we got to get one of those guys because we don't feel like there's that top end talent next year?
Yeah, I think, it's something that we've talked about in here before a couple of times, which is that, this golden generation of quarterbacks just retired and people just pretended like it didn't happen and like, oh, we were all going to be good. And then we watched some slop for a couple of years. You know what I'm saying? And you can kind of see how teams are moving and kind of trying to shore up those quarterback rooms and even get a couple of options of guys because, there's only so much scheming that you can do. And we see that with the Niners where it's like, hey, you can get guys open, you can have all this great talent. But at the end of the day, if you don't have kind of there's not a lot of Mahomeses walking around. There may have never been another player like Mahomes, obviously. But, unless you have that really like top end quarterback, it's really hard to win, especially in the AFC. So, yeah, I think that's the key is that like, if you take that many quarterbacks and let's say half of them pan out, well, then you're set for 10 years and you don't have to think about this, crap again. And you can go get somebody, go get your tackle, go get whatever you want that's more of a surefire pick,
Jade Daniels coming off the board as one of those quarterbacks at 2 to the Commanders. Makes me uneasy, but then, as somebody that wants to see him succeed because he was just so fun to watch when he was at his absolute best. And they are going to bring in some new pieces, hopefully, to be able to continue to help in. It's very much a new look Commanders. But, yeah, I think about him running around on that FedEx Field grass. And it's not RG3 flashbacks because they're different players. They are. But I just think to myself, oh, that doesn't feel like it's going to end particularly well. So I'm a little bit scared of that. But, I mean, him going number 2 overall, it felt so inevitable. But it did not feel inevitable by the start of the draft process. But by the time we got here to Thursday, like anything besides that would have been considered a stunner.
Yeah. All right. Let's just do a couple of 1,000-foot things. So Brian Kelly players, 3 of the top 6 players drafted with Joe Alt, right?
Oh, you're going to count Joe Alt. You're going to count Joe Alt.
Of course I'm going to count Joe Alt. Why would I not count Joe Alt as a Brian Kelly player?
Wait a minute. Did he start in 21?
Yeah, he was recruited by Brian Kelly like in his last recruiting cycle.
Okay, recruited by Brian Kelly. All right, so that gets added to the graphic. That's good.
Yep.
Also added to the Brian Kelly graphic. This is the first time in his 34 years of a head coach that he has had a first-round quarterback.
So wild, right? Yeah,
34 years.
Jimmy Clausen was the prodigy. That never panned out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about that. That's absolutely crazy.
But yeah, so what I was going to say is that's actually funny enough, not the guy whose ACLs I'm worried about because that's Malik Neighbors, who that field, MetLife Stadium already messed up. OBJ's knees, not excited about the Danny Dimes connection. But how about this? There's kind of a third thing there. I mean, imagine, again, saying this sentence. I was joking about that texting you. Imagine saying this sentence. I hope the Washington Commanders take Jaden Daniels because I think at this point in time, They're a more competent football organization than the New England Patriots.
Fair. I think that's perfectly fair. Yeah, I mean, no more Dan Snyder makes a big difference. That's
That's
kind of
huge. Yeah.
the trickle down effect. But yeah, Neighbors coming off the board at 6, a little bit frustrated. I was not very optimistic, but I held out a sliver of hope that he could potentially drop to the Bears at 9, and instead Rome Odunze fallen to 9. My buddies FaceTime me immediately. My brothers texted me, like, we're all, we're fired up, and
Gosh,
it
that rules.
oh, it's the best. It's the best. You don't get a ton of those in, as a fan of a pro sports team. Like, you don't really get a ton of those moments where you truly feel like you have reason to be excited. And as a Bears fan, man, I know I've said it a lot on these airwaves, but I just want to see passing offense that's competent. Scott Docterman brought up the point that just hurts so badly. The Bears haven't had a Pro Bowl starter, a quarterback starting in the Pro Bowl at quarterback since Sid Luckman 1942. So
Oh,
it's been a minute. It's been a minute. Mitch made a Pro Bowl, but we wasn't starting or doing anything like that.
right.
So yeah, I'm excited for the Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze / DJ Moore / Keenan Allen / Cole Kmet connections. I'm very, very much excited for it. And I came to grips with the very likely world in which the Bears weren't just going to run 12 personnel and draft Brock Bowers, who didn't fall that far.
Yeah.
Came off the board at 13 to the Raiders.
Really
Don't know
quick
who's
before I
throwing the
forget this
football.
though, the Harbaugh thing is so funny, right? Because to your
Yeah.
point about Keenan Allen, he's like, let's cut all these receivers, let's give our guy no weapons, and it's like, and let's draft a tackle. And it's like, brother, you literally could have gotten a receiver that you could have gotten any like the top end talent. I know Gerald's very good. Again, he's an agenda item for me, but
Brian
it's like,
Kelly, coach player, yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, yes, but it's like you have no what? What are you doing? Like,
Harbaugh said in the presser, he's like, I know people are going to be upset about the lack of weapons, but we view offensive linemen as weapons.
we're gonna hand the ball off 35 times in a row.
I love it. I love it. Look, that pick was so Harbaugh. The image of Joe Alt sitting there. Oh my God! I
Stood
showed
up
it
like
to
the
Lauren.
Iron Giant, powered up. That guy's massive, dude.
I mean, he looked like the guy from The Incredibles. It's
Yeah.
like, holy cow! How is he so big, just sitting there? And like I don't know if it was his girlfriend, his wife, or whoever it was. She was just a grain of rice next to that large human being. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we also had Brian Thomas coming off the board at 23 with the Jags trading up to be able to get him. And the moment that Brian Thomas's parents gave us, if you haven't seen it, it was so unbelievably funny. Laura Rutledge kicking it to the family, and she's interviewing the family, which is a really hard thing to do, to remember all the names. She at one point like forgot one of the mom's names or something like that as she's interviewing them, and the mom like kind of called her out for it. And I was like, that's kind of a rough move when all the people that she's talking to, like, I don't know. But she's talking to Brian Thomas Jr.'s parents, and like goes to the dad, and like you can tell the dad's just kind of in his own world. He's just trying to like soak in the moment, stuff like that. And then, Laura's like, I think she said something to the effect of like, like how far has your family come to be at this moment? And his mom says, we came from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then it just cuts off right there. It's like, well, we weren't really talking geography of like Baton Rouge to Detroit.
That's the thing, bro. Everybody from Louisiana is pretty much hilarious, and it's either unintentionally or intentionally, and it's so great. Like when you see even like Malik Neighbors, like the fit he had on, like just like they cut to these people, and it's just like, I'm on MTV Cribs. Like I'm gonna make this into like just the funniest, like most real experience. I love my people, man. Especially when you get guys kind of fight for those top draft spots. You talk about Brian Thomas, who again, the Jags looking like a pretty smart organization. Now, not organization because they had the gambling guy. They had like some weird stuff go on in the back end. But like, in terms of what they're building, with the offense, like I actually feel pretty good about that too.
Calvin Ridley gambled when he was with the Falcons, not when he was with the Jags.
Oh, I was talking about the front office guy. The guy that like embezzled $20 million or whatever.
Potato, tomato. 4 SEC receivers came off the board in round 1. I was putting together 5 takeaways column, And my last takeaway was going to be, these kind of second tier guys from the SEC, Leggett and Pearsall and McConkey. These guys will be your best available going into Friday night with round two and three. And then the last two picks, of course, we get Pearsall coming off the board at 31 to the Niners, and then the Panthers trade up to be able to take Leggett at 32. And a really good draft for SEC receivers, man. Like, one of those that I definitely did not see coming into this year. I didn't think that there'd be multiple first round receivers from the SEC when the season started. And I remember thinking, like, are we kind of in a more of a transitional type year? We talked a lot about Juice Wells and Malik Neighbors, and then kind of, it falls off a little bit after that. And to see that four different three different programs and four SEC receivers total came off the board in the first round. I mean, think about this, Will. Like, the SEC had as many wide receivers selected as the Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12 each had in terms of total first round selections.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably making it to a graphic sometime soon. Probably.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, it feels like there's kind of this awakening, right? And I don't know if it's one of those things, like we talk about with like soccer in America, where it's like, well, if LeBron played soccer, then like we'd be the best at soccer. But it's like, feels like in the SEC, like it used to be all these huge, like kind of fast guys, like kind of your linebackers, your edges, stuff like that. Now it feels like a lot of the athletes in the SEC are starting to play receiver, and you get these just creatures coming out of these SEC schools. Leggett is a great example. My boy, I'll say the deep ball. My favorite voice I've ever heard in my life. I'm so excited.
Will, can I confess something on these airwaves? Can I confess something? I had an email that got lost in the shuffle that would have set up Xavier Leggett to come on this podcast. I rarely lose track of an email. And for whatever reason, this one slipped, and we could have had Leggett on. And I may or may not have, but definitely would have had him do at least a few voiceovers. And I blew that. Hand up. That's on me. Your boy likes to be able to admit it when he beefs up. I beefed that one up.
Well, he strikes me as a guy who has like a Hotmail account. So you might be able to email him like in a couple days, and he'd be like, hey, I'll come right on, man. What, you got a radio show, a podcast? I love him, bro. I've loved him since I first saw him like return kicks and everything. I saw him in that Georgia game, like I talked about. The Panthers finally did something smart. I feel like this is a great. He's just a ball. Like, he's like a gamer. He's a physical dude. I love that he's like kind of from that Carolina area. Like, he can just kind of stay near. Like, he even answered that question on one of those interviews. So yeah, I love that. And like, Pearsall is like the guy I've loved. Like, we've talked about him a ton. So like, he's a great fit with the Niners. The Niners are so great at, using like finding kind of uniquely skilled players and putting them in space and using their skill set. So yeah, I'm actually loving the fit for a lot of these guys that came off the board too.
Pearsall is Florida's second receiver drafted in the first round in the post-Urban Meyer era. The first was Kadarius Toney. So that's hard to fathom when you consider the amount of in-state talent at that position. I mean, Alabama alone's got three of them from the state of Florida who went off the board in the first round. And I was like, I'm putting together something for that'll be up either Sunday or Monday. Negative recruiting stats, or for basically like each SEC team as it relates to the NFL draft, and that was one of them that I had ready to go for Florida. Was talking about like the only first round receiver they've had in the post Urban Meyer era is Kadarius Toney, who is like not in the best of standing with his team or probably his previous team after just 3 years in the league. But yeah, Pearsall gets to kind of end that, a guy that really helped himself tremendously. I mean, what that guy turned into at Florida, and some of the film that guy put together was second to none for sure. Yeah. Other takeaway, the pick that I liked the most of any SEC player in the first round, and then I quickly realized, oh crap, you have to root against this guy, was Terrion Arnold going to the Lions. Being there and having that home team reception where vibes are just good with the Lions, man. You talk about ultimate good vibes team. Yep. The Lions, I said it to Lauren as the draft was starting. I was like, yeah, it's kind of cool that the draft is in Detroit. The Lions kind of feel like America's team. I was mansplaining that to her. And then Terrion Arnold is like the best guy to have drafted in that spot. Nick Saban talks about how he still comes over. He's Miss Terry's favorite, like ever, basically. and how that I know that Terry Arnold has been going on with the next round for I think just for maybe this season or the last season and a half, whatever it was. But it's somebody that Alabama like absolutely grew to love, and it's interesting. You talk like Saban talked about the tampering, to be able to get a corner from Toledo. If he ends up doing that, does Terrion Arnold become who he is as that outside corner alongside Kool-Aid McKinstry, a guy that came in as the obvious first round pick coming into this year? Kool-Aid McKinstry doesn't end up getting drafted in the first round, and Terrion Arnold does. He was the better player this year.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the moment that I realized, like, oh yeah, Connor, like you got to kind of your fandom is definitely going to probably impact how you feel about Terrion Arnold from this moment forward after he got that unbelievable reception from Detroit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's a couple of guys here where like you could definitely see a world where it ends up perfectly. Like I talked about that with Pearsall. I do actually like Dallas Turner the Vikings a lot. There's kind of
Traded up to get him too.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like one thing that they've been like sneaky good at is like pass rushers. And then like one that it's one of those that it's either going to be, oh my gosh, genius, or like how did you get here? Amarius Mims for the Bengals.
Yeah.
That is a guy who, I mean, he's obviously had like a little bit of an injury history. It's not like he's been like a full time like one of these tackles that you just week in and week out is always healthy.
8 starts.
Always
Yeah.
And but like that's kind of the thing. It's like, well, if that guy had played regularly, he would have been a top 5 pick. You know what I'm saying? Like that was kind of the one thing against him. So yeah, like if he can stay healthy, and that's kind of the Bengals problem overall, but if he can stay healthy, like that's exactly what you want for Burrow, as a guy that is just kind of a maybe not a one-of-one athlete, but like pretty close when you see some of the stuff he's done on tape.
Saban kind of called him out too during the draft and said like this is a guy who played. I think he played like the first 12 snaps of the SEC championship, and then he pulled himself out, which was interesting phrasing. It was an ankle injury ultimately that sidelined him for the rest of that game. But it was interesting to kind of hear Saban more or less say he should have played through it. Saban had a couple of moments on the broadcast where he was saying guys need to be able to play at less than 100% because that's what you do in the NFL. You're never truly 100%. And it kind of felt like a little bit of shade that was thrown his way. It was interesting. I know some Georgia fans definitely are like, okay, that's interesting for a draft in which it felt like Saban was super complimentary. His words obviously carry a bit of weight, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like some of the things that he's able to do at that size, I don't think he allowed a sack during his college career. There was some stat like that I saw that it was just like, yeah, I know he's got limited reps, but the reps that he does have are pretty darn impressive and certainly made Georgia a much better team.
Related thought. One. J.C. Latham is a guy that I was convinced just is not good. Like I watched the Alabama line. You can't fool me. I'm familiar with your game. Feels like the Titans, and like I'll be honest, the Titans kind of had like, let me try to think about how to say this. There's like it's a different like coaching staff and everything, so I'm not sure, but they have definitely done a great job at kind of like identifying that, and they have like their new line coach is awesome. So like that's actually another one where it's like whatever you saw in this guy, I kind of trust you. I'm gonna like kind of wait and see. Like pretty much if you go almost anywhere but the Titans, I'm like, oh, you guys got scammed. But I kind of trust them at this point, you know?
I think they're already trying to move him to left tackle. Played his entire career at right tackle.
Yeah,
which is an interesting decision right after you drafted an offensive lineman in the first round last year, Skoronski, and obviously you want to be able to protect Will Levis. Totally get it from that standpoint. But I was kind of surprised that Latham rose as much as he did, late in the draft prospect, where Daniel Jeremiah had Latham coming off the board at 5 to the Chargers to Harbaugh, and at one point you're kind of like, man, is that going to be? Is that a possibility? And it really wasn't very far off from happening, coming off the board at 7 as I'm just
Harbaugh
sitting
just
here
bullying him incessantly.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness. That's a large man, a very, very large man. And, seems like an obvious fit at right tackle, but who knows what they're going to try and do with him. Any other takeaways from day one? I feel like there's
oh my gosh. I was right about this. Sorry. Their offensive line coach is Bill Callahan. That's why I trust them so much. I was trying to like go back and think. It was like a weird situation because his son got the Titans job and he like took his dad as like a position coach. Bill Callahan's like arguably the greatest like offensive line coach in NFL history. He's built like 4 or 5. He built the Cowboys line. He's built all these different lines. So that was my point, is that, like, there's already a Diana Rossini quote, which is he loves JC Latham. So we'll wait and see on that one. But to your point, it felt like a reach. But when that team and that coach reaches, it's like, okay.
No more Vrabel, though.
Yeah.
Just makes you kind of wonder. Yes, we had 11 SEC players come off the board in round one. We're going to have a full breakdown of the rest of the draft for the pod early next week. Let's kick it to Rome Odunze. Great conversation with him. It worked out incredibly well. Again, like I said, I had no idea that he was officially going to be joining the Bears, but it was great to be able to chop it up with him, talk a little bit about his career, draft, Kalen DeBoer, a lot of fun stuff with him in a very condensed time frame. So here is Rome Odunze. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Rome Odunze. Rome, we're recording this on Wednesday, and by the time this comes out on Friday, you're going to know where your NFL career is going to begin. So as of this moment, we don't know where that NFL contract will be signed, but we do know what you'll be signing with. You're here today on behalf of Sharpie. You've got a custom pen that you're going to be able to sign your first contract with, which was so cool. You went through a Sharpie signature combine. Tell us about what all the different things that you're doing with them.
Yeah, no, I went through a combine to, make sure my signature was just right, just like, I go through the NFL combine, but making sure my signature is ready to go for all the moments that, Sharpie will be involved with going forward with my rookie season, whether it's the contract or, the different things that I'll be signing throughout my rookie season. And for me, I see myself as an elite athlete, so I think I need an elite pen, especially when I'm taking notes. I don't want any smear, no smudge, no bleed, and the Sharpie S Gel pen provides just that. So yeah, it's my little unique pen. It's got my signature on it, but yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Thank
So you did need a Sharpie to be able to tweet at Caleb Williams. I saw that the other day. He had the tweet about seeing you at the airport and you were going to Detroit, and how you joked previously that if you were trying to fly a plane, like, you wouldn't be able to land it in case of an emergency. You couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I actually dropped you on my big board when I saw that, because I want my
Oh
receivers
man.
to. I know it's a tough look. I want my receivers to just have irrational confidence that they could do anything.
Okay.
Would you have irrational confidence that you could play quarterback in case of emergency?
Oh, absolutely, definitely. I mean, I could hand the ball off. I could throw some. I could throw some check downs, and I could throw it deep. I don't know if I'm hitting anything on timing, but I'm gonna let the wide receivers go make a play. That's for sure.
Better quarterback than pilot, confirmed.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes sense. There are some skeptics about the Kalen DeBoer fit at Alabama. There are some skeptics, I think, in the SEC, people that wonder if he can replace Nick Saban at Alabama. What would you tell those people?
Oh man, I mean, replace Nick Saban. I don't think that's the right question to ask. I think you leave Nick Saban as it was, as a tremendous coach. Some would say was one of the best coaches in college football, and you take on exactly what Kalen DeBoer is going to bring, which if, in my experience, was a very genuine person and a mindset to go win games. He led us to go play in a national championship game. So I think he'll bring just that, and I think you can look at his pedigree throughout his entire college football tenure. It's impressive. I mean, the guy's lost, I think, 10 games total. So, I think he's the man for the job, and I think they'll come around to it. And when they continue to have success, I think they'll continue to welcome him.
What is it about his offense that's unique compared to others that you've seen?
I think it's very explosive in the fact that he wants to throw the ball downfield and he wants to create running lanes for running backs to have big runs, and it's very flavor of the week as well. It has its base concept and those base things that you continue to go back on, but it just allows for so many adjustments from week to week to fit the attack plan that needs to go into to attack each and every defense that changes each and every week.
When he came to Washington, did you think about transferring? And if so, where would you have gone?
I did think about transferring. I did. First and foremost, I was, gonna hear the coaches out. So I hadn't really talked to any, other coaches from any other programs yet. Honestly, I never officially entered the transfer portal just because I wanted to hear out the coaches first to see if I liked what they had to say, and I did. And they showed me Michael Penix's film, and it was pretty much set in stone from that point. So there was no really schools I thought of transferring. after that because I had already, got re-recruited and recommitted to the Huskies.
It would have made sense for you to go to a lot of different places, though. I mean, it's easy for us to kind of think about it as college football fans. Did you ever have anybody reach out to you and be like, "Hey, man, no, not like a tampering way, but like you could have done some big things playing here," but at the same time, it's like it's hard to see your career playing out any differently.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, even afterwards, after I had left college football, there's, other teams saying different things from the coaches that I've talked to from the recruiting, hit me up like, hey, we could have done this, but man, you made a good choice. But no, I don't think there was anybody during that process that really was directly hitting me up, honestly. But definitely some coaches and stuff afterwards that were like, hey, you could have done this, but you had a pretty good years as well. So
You were a big time recruit, coming out of Bishop Gorman, a place that obviously has produced so much talent. I was looking at your rosters the other day, like while you were there. It's unbelievable. I mean, the receiver room alone is just kind of insane. So, obviously, like you were very well known as a recruit. I found your 24/7 sports evaluation from back in 2019. I want to read it to you and get your unfiltered thoughts on it, if that's okay.
okay, let's hear it.
So it says lean frame with length and strong build, room to add mass without losing flexibility, stellar straight line speed, physicality to gain separation at the line of scrimmage, smooth route runner, although needs some refinement in getting out of breaks, athleticism to go up for the football in traffic, good body control and fluidity to make defenders miss in space, threat to stretch the field and get behind the secondary, could improve as a natural pass catcher and be more consistent over the middle, potential multi-year starter to Power 5 level and all conference type performer, upside as a day 3 NFL draft selection.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I mean, it was all sounding good until they talked about day 3. I don't know about all that, but that was pretty good. Yeah, I think, 2019, yeah, I mean, I probably could improve on some of those things and at that point in my career and we'll continue to improve. But that was a pretty solid description. I thought it was all going well till they said day 3. I was like, dang, I mean, all those things and I'm going day 3, geez.
That's exactly the part that I just wanted to get to. It's like what determines that at that point if you say all those positive things.
Right. Yeah, they
Yeah,
didn't really believe some of those things they put down, that's for sure.
very true, very true. Do you mind if I critique your Chipotle order?
Oh, no, go ahead, man.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so if someone hasn't seen this on Twitter, it's all over, social media and stuff like that. The order is double tortilla, double
Uh-huh.
chicken, double white rice, black
Uh-huh.
beans, pico, corn salsa, sour cream, cheese, lettuce.
Mhm.
Like a lot of the things that you got going there. Okay. I really
Okay.
this is going to be the evaluation all over again. I'm going to get to the end here.
Okay.
The double tortilla Rome, that is a game-changing move. Like if you're going burrito,
Absolutely.
you can't just have one tortilla, right? Like how many times that's probably saved you a million times, right?
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. I mean, it's mandatory just because I mean, it the way, it's supposed to be done, it's spread out a little bit. It's just not two tortillas stacked on top of each other, It creates a wider surface area, and that's perfect for what I need.
Okay, so love all that. No problem with it whatsoever. But why are you anti guacamole?
Oh man, I got the corn salsa in there. I got the pico de gallo. Like I, the guac just adds too much to it. I want the chicken. I want to taste the rice. Like I feel like I'm adding too many different flavors at that point.
Can never have too many flavors in a Chipotle
But I'm a
burrito.
big chips and guac guy. Like you can, if that's what you need. How about with the burrito with the chips and guac on the side?
Okay,
Is
that's
that
good.
okay?
That's fine. I just didn't want to hear that you were some anti-avocado guy. That
Oh
you would have
no,
moved down on the draft board again if that happened.
man, I'm gonna be, day 3 just like 24/7 on your list at the end of this.
This has been great, man. I want to get you out of here with some rapid fire. I know you got a million things to do. Just first thing that comes to mind, does that work for you?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, true or false? Catching passes from a lefty is super weird at first, and maybe just kind of always super weird.
False.
It looks weird. It looks weird coming out of his hand. And
Does it?
look, I graduated from Indiana. I've seen so much of Michael Penix, and it is still weird watching it come out of his hand for everybody
Right.
else except you.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, when I watch this film, I don't even think I noticed this. So maybe it's a little weird for me to watch righties nowadays, but it's smooth to me.
Fair, fair. If you could go back and play one college game against a specific corner that you felt like got the better of you, who would it be?
Oh man, got the better of me. Uh I don't know. I want to know. I would say, ooh, I would go against I'm forgetting his name. He's from Oregon. He plays for New England now. Christian Gonzalez. I thought he was a really good corner. I mean, I wouldn't say he got the better of me, but I think we didn't have enough reps in the games to determine those things. So I would say him.
You're going to get your chance very soon on that one, so you don't
Yeah,
have
for
to worry
sure.
about that. What's your favorite route to run?
Go ball, a touchdown. Yeah.
Excluding Husky Stadium, what was your favorite place to play in college?
Oh, I really liked I liked playing at Oregon just because the atmosphere was great. They were hollering at us, they hated us, and we hated them. So that atmosphere was a lot of fun.
Okay, last one for you. Odunze. Can you just pronounce your name correctly here so that nobody ever gets it wrong again?
Yeah, that's all right. I'm gonna do first and last. Rome Odunze.
Do you get people that say Rome or like how do people
Oh yeah.
butcher Rome?
Oh yeah. It's Rome. They think it's Romeo Dunze instead of separating it. Romy. There's been several different things, but for the record, here it is.
Okay, last one for you. My buddy lives like a stone's throw away from Soldier Field. He's got a view from his place. He needs a roommate, but says he can only, he's only willing to take someone on if they got a Netflix account or something like that. So
Okay.
if by the time people are listening to this, you do go to a certain team that plays in a certain windy city, if you need a roommate, I got you covered. We'll take care
Okay.
of that. We'll take that offline.
Okay, yeah, no, shoot. If I don't gotta pay, crazy high rent or anything, I'm down for it. So I got a Netflix password he can share, but he's got to bring something to the relationship as well. You know what I mean? Like it's not, I need the Hulu or something.
He's got Hulu, so that'll
Okay,
work. That'll be
okay,
perfect. That'll be
sounds good.
perfect. Rome, really appreciate the time. Best of luck with everything you do after you sign on the dotted line with Sharpie, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Have a good
Appreciate it,
one.
man.
Yeah, peace.
Will, pitch me SEC uniforms. We debated internally. I don't know, not so much debated. We discussed internally if we wanted to do SEC helmets separate from SEC jerseys. I think if we were big helmet guys, we would have done that. I'm not the biggest helmet guy in the world. And I know that's surprising because if you love college football, you theoretically love everything about it. I actually am not the person that ranks helmets or collects them or that guy. I have certain things that I like, like I'm a sucker for script. I love the Carolina script when they bust that out. But like for the most part, I think a lot of helmets are at the same level for me. So that's why we or at least you brought up the idea of like, hey, why don't we just do uniforms as a whole that encompasses helmets, so it's jerseys and helmets. I think that makes the most sense for this discussion.
Yeah, fully. And there are some helmets that are amazing that kind of go with bland uniforms, and there are some uniforms like the inverse is true sometimes. So I think that if your brand is known for like just a cool helmet, like the LA Rams come to mind, where it's like your
Sure.
helmet's super cool, not crazy about your brand, especially when it was mismatched. It's like it feels like we're giving a design team credit that almost doesn't deserve it sometimes if they just came up with a good or just kept a good helmet from like the 50s or the 70s, like some teams have done.
And if you watch people talk about helmets, they almost always bring up the uniforms too.
Right.
So this is an easier way to kind of just be able to say let's throw all of it into the mix, and then we'll make our determination of what is the official SEC uniform of the Saturday Down South podcast based on helmets and jersey combinations.
All right.
Um,
What are you declaring?
so I don't have any biases to disclose
Okay.
here. I don't. I have colors that I like more than other colors, but I think that's just having an opinion. For example, I don't like gray. I think the gray trend of the 2010s, and
Horrible.
I'm not big on the smoky grays either. So Tennessee fans like don't hate me for that. I like your regular uniforms much better.
Right.
I hated gray. Like every time I would see these gray alternates in at any level of football. I remember being at Nebraska high school football all-star game, and they were like both wearing a different shade of gray. Like who thought this was a good idea? This looks so bad. Gray is not meant to be worn in that setting. I know I've talked about this with the jersey contest with my Victor Oladipo
Yeah.
sleeves jersey that was gray and pinstriped which admittedly wasn't my favorite design the Magic have ever
No,
had.
that's a good gray jersey, but it is the exception.
It's
I'm with you. If you're gonna go into a gray direction, it's often gonna go bad more times than not, unless you're like the Raiders or something.
I haven't found one that I particularly like among the gray. There's a worst SEC uniform though, and you nailed it in the graphic that we almost put out.
What's that, Cotter? I don't want to say it.
I'll say it. The worst SEC uniform we've ever seen is the Florida Alligator uniforms.
Yep.
They're so bad, and we can say this because we just named Albert and Alberta our new official SEC mascot of the Saturday Down South podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think even Albert and Alberta look at those alligator uniforms and they say woof. I don't know that an alligator can say woof, but they would. That's what they would say.
It's like the picture of Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram with the real alligators looking down at the fake alligators. Where it's like, this is not it, buddy. Like, you're blending in. It looks, and like, also, I don't think that team was very good either. Like, I think that uniform was used. It was in an A&M game that I believe they lost.
17,
yeah.
I think it was.
It's a long time ago. Yeah, I feel like I just remember watching that game and laughing. Not like if they had played well, maybe it would have been different. But I don't know. Maybe Florida fans, because I saw it in like a throwback post when I grabbed the graphic, and I was like, y'all like those? I mean, like, no. I can tell you when, like I don't like the new Saints jerseys with all the black in there. It's too much. But yeah, woof. To quote Albert the Gator.
Florida fans, like, you can admit it's bad. It's really bad. And we're not just picking on you, because I think the regular Florida uniforms are very clean. And every once in a while, you got to experiment with an alternate. Maybe some fan bases, Alabama fans would disagree with that. Penn State fans, maybe they would disagree with that. They're more the purists. Do you have any biases that you would like to disclose, or just preferences that you would like to list before we get going here?
It's always going to be obviously the LSU stuff. I would not submit LSU necessarily. They have the kind of the Dallas Cowboys thing where they wear white at home, which I think is cool. I think some of the alternates they've done throughout the years, like the old gold, looks really cool. But you definitely can do it wrong. I see that more in basketball than football with the bright colors. But I'm a big believer in, if you're gonna make it like black it out, like really lean into that. Number one, like if you pick a theme, commit. So I'm not saying this is as far as I'm disqualifying any of these, but I'm saying like this is what I look for. Sharks, like this is what I'm looking for in a uniform. One that we didn't get a good comment for was Texas. The way Texas is with like one color and the negative space. The Longhorn logo looks sick on the helmets, all negative space. So anything with a bright color, negative space, not too busy, but it makes the poppy parts pop, I think is the key.
I think the Texas all whites might be my favorite.
Oh man. Yeah,
they're
those
up
are good
there
too.
They are clean, man. And it's unique to Texas. It's not trying to do too much. It's got a little bit of that purist type look, but man, there's something about it. It just fits Texas so unbelievably well, and I kind of like it when colors fit a specific program. And we will not have a Texas pitch. We did not get a good enough Texas pitch, so that will not be the winner, because the entire point of this is pitch me. But that would be like my leader in the clubhouse. If I had to wear a uniform tomorrow for this hypothetical world in which I am playing college football at age 33, I would want to wear the Texas all whites. They are just so unbelievably smooth. Can we disclose? I think there's a very healthy debate about what's considered timeless and what's not.
Yep. I
think a lot of people love Miami's uniforms over the course of time. And again, we're just going to be discussing SEC uniforms today in our pitch, so this is separate from that, but just to get a little peek inside our heads. If you go back and look at the Miami uniforms, I promise you, those early 2000s uniforms that people associate with those great Miami teams, they are bad uniforms. They look like arena football uniforms. They're terrible.
Okay.
And so you can like colors. You can feel that it represents a certain era. I think those early 2000s Ken Dorsey, the Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow uniforms, I think they're horrible. And I love the logo.
Like this. You know what these look almost just like? Maybe I need to pull these up side by side. Is these new Denver Broncos uniforms everybody hates?
Yes. They look just like that. You can have a great logo. I think Miami's got a really good. It has an awesome helmet. But if you're just telling me you have to include, the jerseys with that, I actually think Miami has had so many whiffs, and that when they try and do anything outside of their, whatever they were in the 80s with some of their more basic things, it's actually been pretty bad the last like 30 plus years. So I don't know. Like, can you have good uniforms while being a bad team? That's another question.
I mean, the Miami Hurricanes prove it every year.
But maybe they don't. That's what I'm saying. It's like they have a good logo, but do they have good uniforms? There's, because it's the look good, play good. The ones that I thought of, the non-SEC examples that I thought of for that, like having just great uniforms, but being a kind of a bad team. Mm-hmm. Those script pit unis, the throwbacks that they brought back 2019 full time.
Yep,
those are fresh. Love those. The UNC uniforms for a while. I mean, take it for what it is. If they're not, if you're not winning a New Year's Six Bowl in college football, you're considered not particularly good. But those I would put up there. And then the SEC example, of course, is like Ole Miss has still looked particularly good, even when they haven't been particularly good. So I guess you can, but it does feel so often like if you see any ranking of best uniforms in college football, it's always like, oh, it's Michigan, it's Ohio State, it's Alabama, it's Notre Dame. It's like, well, how much of that is just because they're really good and you're used to seeing those teams win national championships while wearing those uniforms?
So 2 things on that. Number 1, Vanderbilt completely proves this because I think their uniforms go hard. I've always loved the Vandy uniforms with the chains on the helmet. Imagine if that team looked good. Like, imagine if that team played well. It would look, it would be electric. Like the Keyshawn Vaughn era too. Like, I think Vandy's obviously had some bad uniforms because they changed it up a lot. But like the average Vandy game day is like one of the better ones in the SEC as far as like the kind of kit they pick. Yeah, and I think I had a second point, but I like forgot it because I was imagining all the Vandy stuff. But oh yes, did I ever tell you how I picked the color scheme of my house?
Of your current house that you live in?
The outdoors of my house, yes.
Like, I didn't know that you picked that.
Yeah. So one day I was looking through paint. Because the paint was like old and brown, and I was like, my house has a lot of porches in front. It's like I want my house to look like a UNC football helmet.
Really?
Yes. There's a specific UNC football helmet that looks just like my house because of the porches are the bars.
So you essentially had the Argyle created from the porch, and then you had the color ready to go.
Not the Argyle, but the powder blue with the charcoal, like the dark gray. That was always my favorite color combo. So that's the thing. Yeah, give me a powder blue. Give me like the Carolina blue. Always looks sick. It looks sick in basketball. It looks sick in football. But yeah, I think you can absolutely have cool jerseys and not play well.
It's hard. They've got to be really good.
Yeah.
They've got to be truly special. Otherwise, we just kind of discredit them. That's just the way that it typically works. Okay, let's start with. This is a great place to start from starting on South Instagram. This one from Kyler Colip. This is, as he says, from a Mississippi State fan. Kyler says, contenders.
Oh, I hate maroon.
Yes.
I got to describe. That's what I need to declare. I hate the color maroon. It will never look good. I think the Avalanche have the worst jerseys in sports. That's it. Thank you for that. Okay.
Are the Avalanche officially maroon, or are they?
Oh yeah, they're maroon and powder blue. It's horrible.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I was thinking that it's very tough to differentiate crimson and maroon sometimes. I get that a lot. Like at Indiana, there'd be people that would say like you're maroon, and there'd be people that would say that you're red. It's like, it's actually crimson, but to each their own. Okay. That's definitely worth bringing up. We will not be discussing Mississippi State as having one of the best uniforms in the SEC. I agree with you that maroon, there's just always better, and you're so close to being better by being one of those other colors. So, okay. Mississippi State fan Kyler says the contenders for this are Ole Miss, he says, not me, Kentucky, Mizzou, USC. I'm assuming he's talking South Carolina. Yep, South Carolina. Tennessee. Definitely not, according to Kyler, Mississippi State. Very humble to admit that. That's as unbiased as it gets. That's why this is making the cut. Bama, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Florida. And Kyler says my pick is Tennessee or South Carolina. It pains me to say this, but Ole Miss might be the real winner. I just can't pick them as a State fan. Well, that's a pretty good pitch for Ole Miss, isn't it?
We are aligned, brother. I'm glad. I hate the rated or parade of the rude, but you are aligned with me. I fully feel you that the State script is cool, but of those two universities, they're usually, the Egg Bowl's a great game. They're usually very close on some stuff. Great, Boo is here now. Uh, they're usually like pretty close, like on the field, but their branding, I think, is on a different level.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that if we're talking about the overall look of the jersey itself, I don't know that South Carolina has a ton of looks. I guess the white with the script is probably their best among things that are more acceptable. I know people like the all blacks as well. I think all blacks are fine. I think people freak out over them when they don't need to. Like that's just I don't know. To me they don't really I like uniforms that kind of distinguish you in like a clean, cool sort of way. And I don't know that that really does as much. Also, never, ever, under any circumstances, no matter what situation you're in, this is the Michael Scott. Don't wear all blacks. Don't wear all blacks for a noon 11 Central kickoff. For the love of God, don't do it. Don't do it. It's terrible. I will automatically say that uniform is terrible. I don't care if you win that game 55-0. Well, if you wear all blacks when it is bright sunny outside, that to me just says you didn't do your homework. You put this together haphazardly. You don't actually care what you look like. And that team deserves to lose. I'll just say it. All blacks for a morning game, you deserve to lose. And you rolled the dice a little bit too much. You can only bust those out when you know in your heart of hearts. I realize the schedule comes out like 2 weeks beforehand. But you have to do this when you know it's going to be a night game. Otherwise, I don't want to see that mess.
Yeah, and you hit on something too that's very interesting, which is like cursed cool uniforms. So like Notre Dame with the green, that is actually a pretty high tier for me. But they don't like wearing the green because they think it's cursed. And all of the highlights,
that was the game.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And I feel like they might have been wearing green for 10 minutes on the field too this year.
Oh, were they?
But point being, a lot of the highlights of them in green are embarrassing games, and so those are almost like kind of it's the opposite of the good uniform, bad team, right? Where it's like, oh, you're kind of a good team, and these are great uniforms, but you don't wear them. Georgia with black for a long time. Unfortunately, we all know the story there. I love the Georgia black uniforms. However, I understood why they're a little bit hesitant to wear them after that one incident with Bama.
Yeah, it was. Some might say it was a funeral. Some might say that. I didn't say that. That's just what certain former Bama, certain former Georgia assistant might have said at one point or another. So as Kyler lays out here, Tennessee or USC is his pick, but I think he's actually making the case for Ole Miss if we're being 100% honest here. So that leads us to this. This is probably the more thorough Ole Miss pitch, and this is from Murph the Murphy. Great Instagram handle. Murph.
Yeah.
Great one. Ole Miss uniforms as a whole are the best of the best. No other team has an entire selection that is better. Every variation that Ole Miss has now is a top choice at minimum in color selection and color coordination. Other teams have one uniform that is good. Ole Miss has 8 versions they can throw out and be the best looking team on the field. I don't know that it's every single one no matter what. The Navy helmet with the all white uniform is a perfectly fine jersey, but I don't know that it automatically screams to me, this is the best uniform out there. Now, if we want to start bringing in the powder blue, that changes everything. It is almost, I almost feel like we have to include it in the discussion because there's nothing that says it's a true outlier, it's a true cheat code or something like that. They bust out any form of powder blue pretty much and it's over.
Facts.
And where Murph is exactly right is that there's a lot more variance to what they're doing now. It's not like just the one specific Ole Miss jersey that they can bust out and then they're good. They've got the helmets, they've got the jerseys, they've got the pants too. I think that they bust out every once in a while. Like they have a lot of different ways to incorporate it. And you see, I mean, how many times do you see Lane on the sideline where he doesn't have some form of powder blue that he's rocking? There's a reason for that. It's because powder blue is just the ultimate trump card when it comes to uniform discussions.
So I love the entry. I will push back on this pitch a little bit. See, this is what we're talking about pitches, guys.
Yep.
Don't say something you can't prove because to me, I don't like when they mix and match the colors of blue. I think if you're going to go powder blue, go powder blue. And if you're going to go dark blue, go dark blue. So don't wear like a powder blue helmet with dark blue accents on your pants. To me, that is a faux pas. Okay. So here's the deal though. I will say, the old school, like Eli Manning, just like the block red and like the block dark blue, also look really good. So I do agree with that. If you keep the red kind of together with the dark blue and you keep the dark blue together, I think everything is great. But if you got powder blue, go all out. Go powder blue helmets with white, or go all powder blue, or whatever you're gonna do. But don't have like all kinds of blues floating around.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on that over the years. I have. I've had moments where I thought it was terrible. I've had moments where I've said, you know what, actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with this. A dark enough navy to go with that powder blue, it still kind of combats. It doesn't really combat so much. I think it complements in certain ways, but you're right. It can get a little bit difficult. I can't stand it when I see somebody wearing a black T-shirt with a navy hat or vice versa.
Same deal. Yep.
Which I realize I'm wearing a navy hat right now, and I've got a blue undershirt, so we're good. But the quarter zip's got a little bit of black on it for the non-YouTube
and
audience.
gray. Wow.
I know. I do actually I'm a bit all over the place. I'm a total hypocrite with this, but I've been seeing that a lot more lately. Where like you just see like dudes wearing black hats with navy shirts. I'm like that you shouldn't do that. That doesn't make sense. So I agree that there is a line, but I think they've done a tremendous job throughout the Kiffin era of being able to incorporate that more. You're right. The pitch probably one sentence too much, though. One or two sentences too much. If they had just cut it off at that point, I think that it would have been absolutely driven home for me.
And I'll give Ole Miss credit on this too. They have a mascot that you just straight really can't put anywhere. Just to be honest with you, you do not want a big old Johnny Reb on the side of your helmets in 2024. So the fact that they've done so well with like a Rebels nickname to me is seriously worth commending. Like that creative team, because it's one thing to have like Green Wave, like Tulane has, and they do a great job with the powder blue. But that Wave logo looks so fire. You put it on anything that's good. Ole Miss just has a script to work with. They do not, they don't do anything like with the logo or the mascot itself. So I think it's worth noticing.
Landshark Tony would have a strong presence on those helmets. I would not be eager to see that if I'm an Ole Miss fan. From a content comedy standpoint, I need to see it. I do. They haven't done that, have they? I'm not misremembering it.
I don't think so. I think Landshark Tony is kind of a meme because remember the whole Admiral Akbar thing from Star Wars too, which is when I really started hating George Lucas because we could have kind of made something happen there. Do you remember that?
No, I do not. Star Wars is not my lane.
There was a pitch, and I want to say it was an SEC Network commercial as well, when they were kind of getting up and running. That was like the students got together and pitched that they changed their logo to Admiral Akbar, who's the guy that says it's a trap in Star Wars because he was a rebel commander. He was like a rebel like admiral in the Space Navy. And so, wow, look, now the Space Navy is real. See you in the future. And so, point being, they were like, oh, we could have like a little bit of Admiral Akbar going on like as our logo. And at the end, according to the commercial, at least like George Lucas like shut it down. And I was like, oh, come on, man.
That probably would have been a bit difficult to pull off with some of those licensing things.
Yeah.
So that makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, for now, though, I think Ole Miss is in a nice sweet spot with their uniforms. And especially if they get to the playoff this year, and then if people associate it with winning in these 4 years of Ole Miss more so than ever, that's going to age very, very well. Let's go to this one from Lady Amanda Face.
Sure.
Why not? Amanda Face says, now that Georgia added the block numbers back, it's them. Classic and clean without being too boring. No gimmicky colors or chrome or anything. The silver britches look great with both the home and away jerseys. I think Georgia's uniforms are really solid. Really solid. They would not push me away if I saw those uniforms at any given moment. And I'm fine when they bust out the All Blacks. Like I get it from the historical perspective, like we talked about. I think the overall aesthetic of it. I remember when they busted them out 2020 against Mississippi State. It was, I think, JT Daniels' first start, and they were wearing those then. And I remember thinking that looks good. It looked good because it was at night. You didn't necessarily have the worry about losing that game. I think it was even a game that they won only by like a touchdown, but still, I think that made a little bit more sense. I agree with Amanda Face. I hate chrome. I don't like the chrome. When Oregon busts that out or something like that, Kentucky has flirted with the chrome a bit. I'm kind of looking at it going, there's nothing really that says that's your team. It's just like you wanted to be part of a trend and then you just brought that to yourself and tried to make it your own thing. But there's nothing that makes it feel like it's part of your identity. Like even with Oregon, who probably does the chrome more than anybody, I don't really feel like that's I mean, maybe it is just because they use it more than anybody, but I
I
don't
think
really feel
Oregon
like it's
gets away
their.
with chrome. And I think, let me ask you this question. Does Notre Dame technically chrome? It's metallic.
Mm-mm. Nah, Notre
Okay.
Dame has a chrome look, but it's the gold paint.
Yeah,
It's the gold
fair.
paint. It's not you're not creating a chrome with that.
Okay.
But I do like the concept of no gimmicks or anything like that. I like that Georgia, for the most part, sticks to kind of who they are. Jerseys are clean. Jerseys are really clean, really solid. Like the block numbers as well. I have no problem whatsoever with the Georgia uniform, with the exception of the fact that the G and the Packers G is the same thing in different colors.
Yep.
We know it. Every high school in America has copied that G. There is
Yep.
a high school within a 20-mile radius of you that has that exact G. I don't know who was responsible for trademarking that G. They did a horrible job because that thing is everywhere.
Yeah, no, well, see, that's the thing too, is it's iconic, right? And so I'm not actually sure. I should know, and I used to know which one it was. Do you remember who was first? I almost feel like it was the Packers, which felt
Oh,
weird. That's why I remembered it.
I think Georgia was first. Why don't you could probably figure this out
Yeah,
in like 2
I'll
seconds.
pull that up next time you're talking. What I was gonna say here with Georgia is like this is just a good. This is an example to me of a good classic look. Like this is a look that has been consistent through my entire life. But here's the cool thing, right? Colors got more vivid over the last like 10 or so years. So if you look at like the old AJ Green jerseys, those are fine jerseys, red and black, whatever. But these new Georgia jerseys, the way that they pop, the way the red is like that highlighter red,
Yeah,
the way
Nike
the
did it
white
well.
shines, and then you add in like, okay, the only bad Georgia jersey I can think of, and it was a bad one, was it for that Boise game? But that was like a while back at this point. That was a chrome helmet. That was a chrome
Yeah.
helmet with the red stripe. It just looked like a whatever AFL team, but every one outside of that has been consistent. This is a university that can mix all of their colors, right? Red, black, white, all go
True.
together. So if you even wanted to bust out a white helmet, which we've seen in like some concepts and stuff, I think that was one that was kind of leaked that didn't actually end up getting worn, but they look really cool, the all whites. So like if you have that option, like you truly can mix and match everything. Another thing that I want to note about their uniforms is the collars, the dog collars, and like in the little squatty Ugga on the side,
Yeah.
fire,
Yeah.
right? So and to your point again, this is where the pitches can kind of get us going. Like the silver britches thing, there's something to that. It's tradition. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, having silver britches was a big deal, and they've kept true to that. So they have the new, the old, all together.
It's a good point. They do check a lot of boxes. They check a lot of boxes for what I would typically look for, and those colors don't scare me. They don't have some maroon or like they're trying to mix in something that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense and trying to make it their own. Like there are certain teams that do that when it's the opposite of Ole Miss, where it just doesn't work. And I've never really been the biggest fan of it. Like even when the Seahawks would do that with the highlighter green, lime green, whatever it was, they would try and implement. I get it; it had its phase for a little bit, but gosh, Seahawks would look way better with their 80s, 90s jerseys, like so much better in my opinion. But I think that Georgia's a solid entry here. I don't know if it's quite good enough to win based on that pitch though. Okay, so while I'm getting responses from Saturday Down South Podcast Facebook group, which you should definitely join, do we have an answer for whether or not Georgia's G was before the Packers G? Because obviously, University of Georgia, we're talking about a school that's been around longer than the Green Bay Packers, but logos obviously are a little bit different in that regard. Somebody stole it from the other person. Like there's no way that this was totally ironic, totally unintentional. I'm going to tell myself the Packers stole this.
Honestly, man, I did remember that correctly. The Packers started with it, which is nuts considering. I mean, but the Packers are an ancient football team, as you know. The investors, they have all these traditions. So yeah, it actually Vince Dooley, it says redesigned their logo and actually like officially hit up the Packers and was like, hey, we're going to use your logo.
Yeah, that hurts it for me. I'm going to be honest. My very biased Bears opinion, that hurts it for me a little bit. Saturday Down South Podcast Facebook group. We've got a few.
That's like the second down and die. It's like moving on.
Grant Haney says the best uniform, hands down, is Alabama. The simplicity of the unis with the number on the helmet combined with crimson piping on the pants is second to none. Not to mention the fact that no jerseys are retired means familiar numbers continue to be donned by future NFL stars in Tuscaloosa, the place where legends are made. I actually don't like that last part. I kind of wish that they had jerseys that were retired. I get why colleges don't really do that as much because you have guys that are doubling up on jersey numbers. There's only, if you block out some of them, it gets real dicey. You don't want to have a Billy Napier situation with two number threes in the field at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's really tough if you retire like 20 jerseys. You just can't do that. So that's why that list is like single digits. Like Florida hasn't even retired Tebow's number yet, right? I mean,
obviously not. Yeah, they just keep giving it out.
So I mean, yeah, I think that there's something to be said for it, but I will give Alabama credit for this. It is not my favorite from an aesthetic standpoint. I think the number on the helmet, though it is plain in many ways, so many people can look at that and associate it with a specific era. And that's really cool and really hard to do. We take that for granted how hard that is to actually do, where you can have a very casual sports fan, not even a casual college football fan, look at that helmet and probably identify very quickly. How much of that is because of Forrest Gump? Probably a decent amount, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely adds to kind of some of the lore of the uniform itself. And, you know, I tend to give Alabama more credit for sticking to who it is than I do less. I don't think that you have to be that dug in with your uniform concept to never want to deviate ever. But I will say, because of Alabama's success, they haven't had a reason to turn the page just yet. If they were going to turn the page, it would have happened pre-Nick Saban era. That would have been the time to be able to do it.
Championships are coming out of the woodwork.
How many of those titles, claimed or unclaimed, were with those exact uniforms?
Yeah, those exact uniforms. I mean, yeah, all of them. And that's a joke because there was like a media guide where they gained like I think 6 national titles between one year and the other.
It was impressive.
Yeah.
It was really impressive.
Yeah, honestly,
it was like an SID's doing that happened. Yeah.
I'll say this. We do you have more in Bama?
I'm debating how I feel about it. I'm hemming and hawing about this because I think you can go in a lot of different ways, but I feel like I need more pitching other than the obvious, what we kind of already know about them.
Yeah, okay, here's my thing. So I'll give this pitch credit. This was a really good pitch. Because I came in like, okay, you know me. I make jokes about my rival teams, but I can really respect, like we talked about, Albert was the mascot that I picked. Like I can, Ole Miss is an LSU rival as well, guys, in case y'all forget. But I just have never liked these jerseys. I think they're fine, but here's my deal. You gotta get original like one time. Like, you got to go do something new, like, one time. I did not know they don't retire jerseys. That's a great part of the pitch. I think that's really cool. I actually disagree with you on that. I think that the, what would I call it? Like, part of the not having the name on the jerseys type vibe, where it's like, well, if you're number one for Alabama, you're number one for Alabama. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter, who's worn that. It's all part of a tradition. That's the coolest thing about the jerseys to me. I'm right there with you as far as the numbers on the side of the helmet are the second coolest things. Very number related, I guess. That's all because that's all that's on the jerseys. Yeah, I think both of the number things are pretty cool. To your point, I think Forrest Gump, I think it's another really good point where it's like, that's a cultural lexicon. That being said, I just feel like, even if like, okay, Dallas Cowboys, another great example. They pretty much have one jersey. Like they have a second one as well, but they still go back to those old with the stars on the shoulders with the
90s Emmitt Smith.
Yep. And like, those are different jerseys and they're still iconic jerseys. And like, even like the Giants have different jerseys. They have some reds. Like, so that's my thing is that you got to have at least one alternate that's like giving me something for me to just go, okay. Like again, Notre Dame, great example. They have the cream. That's cool. Georgia has the black and the red. That's cool. Show me you can do one other thing and I'm right there. But I think that that's a pretty strong case for such a classic jersey.
I'm not anti-purist. I think Alabama's uniforms are fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you think that they are God's gift to man, you are probably looking at those with a little bit of a biased take.
Yeah.
If you think that they are the worst thing ever, ask yourself if you wish that your program had an identity quite like that one. Because you probably do. You probably wish that you could be able to see a helmet and just absolutely know. And the jersey itself, again, it's it's not really much different than Texas's concept and what Texas tries to do. I just think that Texas has a better overall look with the helmet. That's why the helmet is part of this conversation, because it's really not a whole lot of frills. I mean, you're really not getting a whole lot, especially the whites. Um,
You know what? I'll say this too, actually. I'm going to have the reverse of the George's opinion here as well. I like the older red. I like that Mark Ingram darker red that they used to wear. I think crimson's not a color that should pop. That dark, like the tearaway jersey looking red, I actually think look better than what they're wearing now, too. So if they had stayed with the red, I actually like this jersey a lot more. Rather than look at these old, like, Julio era, Mark Ingram era jerseys. Yeah.
I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think it has to be this polarizing take that so many people make the Alabama jersey out to be. The Alabama uniforms, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Let's end with this one from Eric Beasley. Eric says the answer is clear, clean, simple, iconic. When you see a yellow helmet, you know it's LSU. So we're refraining here from Will having significant input to pitch me. I love the LSU uniform. I do. I think the yellow and the purple work really well together. I see that, and I think LSU, those concepts. I don't think Lakers. Now, I realize pro sports fans would disagree. If you're giving me yellow and purple and say, who does that remind you of? I'm saying LSU every single time. Okay? Didn't grow up on that. That's just what my college football brain tells me is happening. I don't like the purple jerseys at all. I hate them. Like, I think whenever they come out in them, I think to myself, that's TCU or Northwestern or some botched Clemson experiment. I do not like those uniforms. I think that everything else pretty much that they do from a concept standpoint works, but that one is so bad for me that I have a tough time saying that LSU as a whole has the best uniforms in the SEC. Is that a fair take?
Yes. Couple of things off of this, man. Let me just get all the 1-star reviews I can today.
We don't need to address the 1-star reviews. Who cares?
No, I know. Because I'm thinking to myself now. I got to say this because it does kind of bother me. It's not gold. It's yellow.
It is yellow. You know what, Will? You know what? You're right. You bring up a great point because
yellow. It is yellow, isn't it?
I get into arguments so much with my Iowa buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Your colors are black and yellow. Vanderbilt is black and gold. Notre Dame.
Iowa think they're gold too?
Iowa thinks they're gold.
What?
Will. Yep.
And the Steelers, what are they?
That
makes even less sense.
What's the song? Is the song black and gold? No, it's black and yellow. Black and yellow. Yeah.
Okay, now I feel better because that's worse. That's so much worse. It's the Steelers jersey.
It drives me nuts. So when that flag comes on the field, when an official throws a flag, is that the gold flag that they're throwing? Because that's the same color you're wearing. Don't tell me that's gold. Vanderbilt, you get to claim gold. Notre Dame, you get to claim gold. UCF, you are the Golden Knights. You get to claim gold. You know who doesn't? Is LSU and Iowa and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who don't even think claim gold because they actually have a concept of what colors are. But so many of these teams just want to claim gold. That's more egregious than claiming these national championships, is claiming gold. Just because you think yellow's lame doesn't mean you get to claim gold.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, if you go read up, like, Chris Creamer, I think, does, like, logos.com or sportslogos.com, great guy. I would just look up his name, Chris Creamer, but he goes through all the history of all this stuff. And, yeah, I think back in the day when they were making jerseys, like, colors were not available, man, like, in, like, the 1900s and stuff. So if you saw that was gold to you, and I get it. But then, when you see, like, a Notre Dame, it's like, well, that's why they take
then what's that color? Then what's that color? Because they're different, right?
Like, I'll give them credit. Like, they would take the time. I think that was in Rudy or was in some movie. They're just spraying all the helmets over every night, like over and over and over again to keep them that metallic gold. So, yeah, I think that's a little bit of it's like, hey, it's too late to change it now, obviously. But to your point, the Lakers, anyway.
It's purple and yellow.
Yeah.
Purple and yellow.
I'm
sorry. Yep. It just
And
is.
I will say really quick, the purple jerseys look way better with the white helmets and pants than the yellow helmets and pants. I think that's radically different. Like, it's night and day to me.
True. Yeah, I just hate those purple, the purple and white. Whenever they're wearing them, I'm just like, ugh. I feel like LSU, like, you're above this. You don't have to wear those jerseys like that. I just, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Okay, I think we have a lot of good entries. A lot of really good entries. Where are you leaning based on the pitches that we've gotten?
To me, I think it's a little bit, honestly, of a runaway. I think it's Ole Miss.
I agree, Will. Gosh, I agree. If a Mississippi State fan is going through all the SEC uniforms and basically admitting at the end of this, yeah, I know it's Ole Miss, but I just can't say that because I'm a Mississippi State fan. It's Ole Miss because you hate your rivals' colors.
Yep.
You hate them so much. Whenever I see just, green and yellow, it's not green and gold, but whenever I see those Packers colors, think to myself, goodness gracious, what are we doing here? When I see a high school, there was like a high school in Nebraska that would have like the green and yellow. One of the high schools that was local, shout out Kearney Catholic, they would have the green and yellow. And I would just say to myself, ugh, that's your choice? Really? That's what you're going with? You're supposed to hate your rivals' colors. The fact that we got a pitch going through all of those specifics and that's what you ended up with, I think Ole Miss takes the cake.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, they're LSU's rival, and every time we see them, I'm like, dang, they look cool. And that's an all-time jersey matchup, too, is LSU and Ole Miss, because there's always going to be a little bit of powder blue because it's a rivalry game. There's always going to be, like, the white LSU jerseys. Like, we're never going to wear purple against Ole Miss because of the blue. And so, point being, like, that's always really cool. I think Ole Miss is in a very unique position, which is that their current logos are their most successful ones. Which is crazy. If you guys want to talk about the 1960 national title, get out of here. All right. We've talked about it before. Right now is the best period in Ole Miss football history. And I'll be honest, here's why. We got Twitter. All right. If you lived in Mississippi and you got to watch Ole Miss every weekend, you'd get to talk to people about Ole Miss within the 60s. You could go read the paper and go telegram some people and say, LOL, ... Bama lost. But now being good in the modern era is better than being good way back in the day. So Ole Miss kind of rebranding and being the coolest they've ever been is all things combined.
It's interesting. The uniform discussion, as we have really ramped things up, like since the invention of, I guess, not just cable TV with, the rights deals and the way that happened with Oklahoma, in the 80s and stuff like that. But just the internet discussion with uniforms as a whole with college football has really spiked in the last 15 years. And especially now that we have so much more access to other conferences and it's not just regionally based or like, oh, you only see Notre Dame or you only see Penn State. We can actually have these discussions about uniforms because we have the exposure to them. And whenever a team comes out with the new uniform, on the internet somewhere, we just get to roast it or praise it or something like that. So it definitely has picked up in the last 15 years. And while I am not the biggest uniform guy, we just did 40 minutes talking about uniforms. Well,
and I'll do it again. Yeah, I think it's fun. Because it's a truly subjective art form. It's a creative department. Somebody could put out a jersey and be like, this is it. This is it. This is like the sickest thing ever. And then if you're like, I hate that. I think that's the cheesiest, crappiest jersey. Like I said, maybe other people are not aligned with me on the LA Rams thing. I think they look terrible. We don't agree on the Giants. I think the Giants have bad branding and you think they look good because they're classic. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So that's the cool thing about jersey. There's unless you can come up with a cool point, like a lot of these pitches did, and I'll give a lot of people credit on that, like the Bama numbers thing is great. I'm like, I have seen a lot of Bama players wear 1 and 2. That's a really good point. I've never really thought about that. There was probably guys in the 60s and 50s that also wore those numbers that didn't get retired. So yeah, I think that's it's always fun.
Yeah, that was a good discussion. TBD on what's coming next week. I have a couple ideas that I will float your way. Ideas that I don't know that we've delved into a whole lot on these airwaves. So maybe we will be able to bust out one of those for Pitch Me. If you have not, you should leave us a 5-star review. You should subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast, plus all the great clips that we're putting out from segments like these, from interviews and whatnot. Tons and tons.
Connor,
of
you
content.
didn't mention my shirt today, man.
I did not mention your shirt today. These
are Yetis.
You waited until I'm midway through the outro to tell me that?
You said you were plugging the YouTube. That's the best time to do it. If you guys want to see me wearing Yetis, get on YouTube.
I just assumed that was some sort of caveman. Caveman Yeti? Same thing?
Snow cave, yeah.
All right. Fair enough. If you have not, though, definitely leave us a 5-star review. Do that, please. Follow us on the app, formerly known as Twitter, at the SDS Pod, at SatDownSouth, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.